Hey viewers, we're at Natural Products Expo West 2018 in Anaheim, California. My name is Martín Caballero. I'm here with John Craven. We're going to talk a little bit about what we saw in terms of the coffee category, cold brew. What were your overall impressions of just what you saw on the floor? A lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, cold brew continues to be a category that we're talking about here. I think we've done, I don't know how many cold brew coffee roundups at this point, but, you know, I think it was an interesting year for cold brew at the show, in that we finally are past the point where companies are launching just, you know, straight up like cold brew coffee, the good old, you know, bottle of concentrate. And, you know, we're really seeing some differentiation in terms of just where these companies are trying to put their products. So one of the things that really stood out to me was sparkling, which is something that we first saw late last year, but now High Brew has sparkling cold brew. Chameleon finally has done the production for theirs. And of course, you know, Stumptown has their offering as well. So, you know, it seems like that's getting a little bit of critical mass, at least in terms of products. Still feels a little nascent, I guess, but
Sure.
You know, really like what those products are doing.
Yeah, it's cool to see the innovation. I mean, I feel that, as you mentioned, you know, cold brew, people are familiar with it at this point. So, and the saturation in the category is kind of forcing brands to really be on the front foot in terms of innovation. I mean, as you mentioned, sparkling was not a thing that's really on a lot of people's radar, but Chameleon gets behind it, Stumptown gets behind it. All of a sudden, you got a little momentum, and you know, it proves to be a thing. So I think that's pretty interesting. And we've also seen some interesting multi-serves going on too. You mentioned Chameleon; they had a new multi-serve with whole milk, organic whole milk, of course. So that kind of plays in the dairy case. So allowing them to move a little bit around in the store and just expand the offering for cold brew.
Right, High Brew has that as well. So I think, you know, it's something that, you know, you're going to see companies that are trying to get into that part of the store. You know, I think what's neat about both the multi-serve as well as the sparkling is that the type of purchase is different than, you know, what cold brew started as. In the case of sparkling, it's maybe not a breakfast, you know, replace your cup of coffee use occasion, and certainly, you know, multi-serve, it's, you know, not for immediate consumption. So giving consumers choice with it is certainly something that, you know, we're going to continue to see.
Sure, and we've also seen some variation in terms of caffeine levels, which is kind of interesting because it allows the brands to sort of play in a different space, maybe closer to energy drinks. You know, across the board in beverage, people are looking for healthier options, less sugar. Clean label is obviously big too. So, you know, with those different levels, you can maybe present something to those health-minded consumers, be like, you know, instead of picking up energy drink, pick up this high-quality, really tasty coffee, and it sort of, you know, provides some of the same functionality.
For sure, and I think that's, you know, especially true with these shot products, you know, products like Busy, or there's a new brand called Alvarix here. You know, I think that's something that is kind of the obvious progression for coffee to be an energy, and, you know, certainly Monster has done that tremendously well with their coffee energy drink offerings. You know, I think even just kind of how Calif is marketing their concentrate, you know, it definitely feels like a more sort of like, I don't know, packs a punch type of product.
And I think sourcing is also another interesting angle as well. I mean, besides all the innovation with, you know, nitro, sparkling, all this different stuff, we're also seeing maybe a little bit of reaction to that, where there's a single origin. Calif obviously has their signature blend, and the Ethiopian as well. We've seen that from Groundwork, which has some really tasty flavors. They had a new Rwandan single origin here as well. So, you know, there's plenty of room, I think, for both sides, and it makes sense to, while some are pushing this more riskier kind of stuff, to sort of dial it more to coffee-centric and really just dial in on that and bring that to customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going from certainly the playbook of, you know, just kind of coffee beans and whatnot. I sort of feel like that's a slightly risky move in the cold brew space, just in that, you know, it's kind of giving variation that I think the majority of consumers might not necessarily appreciate or be able to taste the difference of. You know, so I feel like that's stuff that is more for, like, you know, the consumer who's already in the know, you know, the coffee geek, you know, trying to win over that consumer. But, you know, regardless, I think it is something that, you know, for those brands, it does seem like it helps the overall brand and their legitimacy as a coffee company and a roaster in some cases. So, you know, I think it's pretty neat to see that sort of stuff.
That's very true. I think it'll be interesting to see how consumers respond to that, embrace, you know, that sourcing story and the sustainability angle that a lot of brands are really trying to develop and make a big commitment to. It makes sense from their end, and you know, I think they deserve some credit for it, but it'd be interesting to see if consumers are really going to be choosing one over the other based on that sort of sourcing story. It's a little early to tell, I feel.
Definitely. I mean, I think, you know, one of the other things I noticed is just that, you know, a lot of these companies are sort of realizing that, the place that they're going to get the most dollars from are things like Frappuccino and, the Java Monster. So, it was interesting to see a bunch of different companies that are actually trying to come up with dairy-based offerings, which, in this sort of world of dairy alternatives that we're always talking about, it was interesting to see Bowery Cold Brew, for example, again, upstarts, as well as, Rise was working on one that they were kind of sampling behind the booth. So, I think you're going to see stuff kind of get back to basics a little bit, again, just because that's, where ultimately, there's a lot of dollars there to be had.
For sure, yeah. I had a conversation with the guys at Pete's as well, and they have a new iced espresso canned line, and that's kind of reflecting of what they see in their stores. Obviously cold brew and other things are popular, but at the end of the day, these sort of iced espresso, sort of maybe a little bit sweeter drinks are still big sellers at the store. So it makes sense to play in the RTD side of that as well. So it's something we tried a little bit behind the booth at La Colombe. It's not in stores yet, but I believe it's in their cafes, is the frothed OJ line and lemonade as well. So sort of using that technology that fueled the draft latte that's been a big success so far, and sort of working that into different liquids and sort of experimenting, seeing what you can do there.
Yeah, I think they're always pushing the envelope. They also, behind the booth in their little cooler, had a coffee Arnold Palmer sort of thing, which was really neat too. Nitro coffee lemonade. So again, I think, they're a company that's trying to push the boundaries, of course, and, present themselves as really innovative, which they are. So, it was certainly a pretty eye-opening kind of flavor profile, just, again, showing that there's a lot of stuff out there that we probably haven't even tried in this space. So,
well, that was another great cold brew roundup. I'm sure we'll be doing another one sometime soon because this category is just exploding, continuing to grow. So thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.